You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will be as one.
At 69 degrees north, news travels faster than the wind, and today it is blowing straight through the Arctic. These are indeed unsettling times, but they're also a moment for renewed action and collaboration. Imagine if we all joined forces. Welcome to Arctic Frontiers. I'm Rida Fakhri, and it is my real pleasure to be back here with you as we embark on a new Arctic Frontiers in a very different landscape. Now, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, it's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces and to see such a packed room right here today. Our theme this year, Turn of the Tide, is more than a catchphrase. It is more than a slogan. It is reality. Geopolitical currents are shifting faster than one could ever have imagined, and nowhere is this more visible than here in the Arctic. Now, since we met last year, a year ago, the Arctic Council has entered a new chapter, with Greenland taking center stage under the Kingdom of Denmark's chairship. Political priorities, though, are changing, defense budgets are rising, and long-standing channels of research and scientific collaboration are under strain. The Arctic is no longer a remote frontier. It is firmly back on the global strategic map. It's a zone of rising military activity, yes, intensifying global competition as well, and high-stakes climate change. But it isn't all bad news. With new challenges come new opportunities. Communities that have lived here and thrived here for generations are now adapting to this new environment. They are finding ways to navigate a landscape that is increasingly shaped by strategic ambition and environmental urgency. But are indigenous communities being given the space they need and they deserve to be a real part of the decision-making? This is one of the issues we'll be talking about throughout this conference. But another core issue of our time, a core question is, how can Arctic security and militarization coexist with sustainable, resilient communities? The Arctic is not static, of course, as you all know. It is dynamic, it is adaptive, and it is resilient. The question is not whether it will change, but how and who gets to decide. When President Trump declared he must have Greenland, it was a blunt reminder that the Arctic is no longer a peripheral issue, if it ever was. And so as global attention unmistakably turns north, there could be no better moment to examine the current state of Arctic affairs. And so to begin our discussions, it is my distinct pleasure to invite to the stage the Foreign Minister of Norway, Espen Barth Eide, to talk us through the interweaving Arctic currents of competition and collaboration through politics, trade, and science. Foreign Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Hida, and dear Governor General, High Representative, Foreign Minister, State Secretary, Excellencies, dear Arctic friends. It is a distinct honor and a pleasure to be here in Tromsø again, and at the Arctic Frontiers Conference, which is very dear to my heart. And you know, when it's February, you go to Tromsø, and this kind of is a static in my life. So it's great to be here. As you indicated, these are special times. The Arctic is hot. And the Arctic is hot in several respects. First, it is hot because we know that there is no place on the planet where global warming is happening faster than in the Arctic. And that is a constant feature that we who live here in Norway and people who live in the Arctic, also elsewhere, are noticing on a daily basis, which for me meant that I left freezing cold Oslo to the pleasant climate of Tromsø. But these are just a small part of a much bigger change that is going on here. And let me start by saying that despite of geopolitics, the physical change in nature, the nature change, the environmental change, the global warming, and it's
menu, bond rolls, bond toast, bond sandwich.
The most daunting challenge to mankind. And we are here present in a place where this can be seen on a daily basis. So those issues which are dear to our Arctic work and central to the work of the Arctic Council, for instance, remain important. So that kind of hotness is something we need to curb. We do not want to be too hot in this context. It's actually good to stay a little bit cool, and that is a global challenge, but we see an increasing interest in that dimension. Secondly, the Arctic is hot because it's now very hot in the international security landscape, and we got an increasing amount of attention to Arctic security issues. Well, welcome to the club. This has been a mainstay of Norwegian foreign policy and that of some, if not all, of our friends and allies for many, many years, that we also need to take more seriously what happens to our security landscape when the ice melts, when the opportunities open, when there is more business, but also when geopolitical tensions come back. This has been a key feature for many years. Later today, we will celebrate 30 years of the Arctic Council, and Governor General Mary Simon was present at creation, one of the people who initiated the Arctic Council, which has been a success. It's still there. We had the chairship until last year. We handed it over to the Kingdom of Denmark, represented by Greenland, which I think was a very good move. And in hindsight, it was a very interesting that is exactly the setup now. The Arctic Council, of course, is not what it used to be, because we have the war in Ukraine. We are not able to work with Russia in the old ways. We do not have political level meetings. There's a limit to how many new things we can do, but it's still there. And it's the ambition of the current chairship, I know, and the previous chairship to keep it alive, keep it relevant, because we need such an institution that is circumpolar for all people of the Arctic that continues. And a very special element of the Arctic Council, of course, is the role of indigenous peoples. The story of the Arctic is also about experience of indigenous people, how indigenous people and the rest of the population live together, a topic that is known from Canada to via Greenland to Norway and Sweden and Finland and other places. So this is a key feature that we need to preserve. On Arctic security, at least since the Stoltenberg second government in 2005, we were very eager to say that the northern areas is our primary strategic area of interest and responsibility. And that has been a constant since then through governments to say that. And we went to NATO, we went to other groupings to raise the awareness of Arctic security having to be higher on the list. And let's point out what we used to say. It was not that there was an immediate threat. It's not that things were very dramatically, very fast changing, but there was some long-term trends that should be factored in to the analysis of how to look after security. We were blessed with the fact that our dear neighbors from Finland and Sweden joined NATO. That made sure that there was more Arctic in NATO and more NATO in the Arctic, and there is now a continuous landmass from here, from the Barents Sea and the Arctic Ocean down to the Baltic Sea of NATO countries collectively bordering on Russia. This has strengthened our security, and High Representative Kaja Kallas, and thank you for being with us, by the way, representing the European Union, who is now taking her personally, but also the Union, taking a much stronger interest in Arctic affairs. We visited one of our newest Coast Guard ships, Bjørnøya, who's here in Tromsø, and had a look at the security outlook seen from here, with everything that's going on in Russia, in the Kola Peninsula, and things that we've been following for many, many years. So now that we've had this somewhat surprising focus on Greenland, which I think will come back, I would like to, since we are actually very much invested in what's happening in the Arctic, I would like to say, yes, security in the Arctic matters. There is more activity also by potential adversaries like Russia in the Arctic, but it's not in Greenland, it's here. And it's on the other side, on the Alaska side, where we actually have visible proof of that presence. And we take proper care of that. We know everything that's happening, and we do that in a NATO context. Thanks God. 7 of the 8 Arctic countries are in NATO, and we have a perfect framework for increasing that tension, but we also need to do it. So there is this long-term Arctic Council type of activity that we like to keep alive. We also want to bring a stronger understanding and stronger focus on the more sort of hard security issues of the Arctic. But we who have been working on that, the collective we who's in this room, from Norway, from other countries, and experts from scientific community, from media, from politics, from business, who've been invested in this for a long time, we have a responsibility. And that responsibility, which of course I as a member of the government might have a little bit more than you, but we all have, is to welcome this new interest in the Arctic and try to help drive it and channel it into something that is somewhat more science-based and fact-based and based on the realities of the challenges that we are meeting. And this is very much what we're here to do today. And we have a superb panel. I will shut up now and leave it to the others, but I am extremely happy to be here. And I look forward to a candid conversation between people who all care, from Canada, from Greenland, from the European Union, from Sweden, and from the academic community, on the complexity of Arctic questions, the opportunities, and what we all can do with it at this pivotal time in global conversations on our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Foreign Minister Barth Eide. Thank you for setting the tone. We will indeed try to be as honest and candid as we can be about the state of affairs in the Arctic today. And as you say, the region is getting hotter in every possible way. Now, from Norway's high north to Canada's vast Arctic territories, what are the responsibilities there? What are the challenges facing Indigenous communities and the communities that live in the Arctic in Northern America? What do they face as the region grows stronger and more strategic in its importance? It is my pleasure to now welcome Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon, Governor-General of Canada.
I think it's morning. Good morning. Bonjour. Dignitaries, esteemed Arctic leaders and partners. It's a privilege to be here and with you today in the beautiful Sampi region of Norway. Arctic frontiers has never been more relevant. I am grateful for the moment discussions it has sparked to help shape the future of the Arctic. I grew up in Nunavik in northern Canada. My family's culture and way of life were inseparable from the land. We traveled by dog team or canoe. We picked berries and fished in the crystal waters of the George River, rich in Arctic char and Atlantic salmon. I remember how my grandmother, Jeannie, would turn on the shore.
Are you running late? Did you see too much? All the awful dreams leave you alone.
Jamais décrivait les Inuits comme un seul grand peuple de l'Arctique. Indigenous peoples have long traveled and learned from one another with respect, curiosity, and a commitment to peace. We've shared the rich diversity of our cultures, arts, sports, spirituality. We've shared the fruits of our ingenuity and innovation. We've shared hardships too, the legacy of colonialism, the impacts of industrial development, and of course, the growing threats of climate change, which has been eroding food sources and traditional navigation routes. Yet, through every challenge, we've shared knowledge. We've supported and relied upon one another. This has given us the strength to stand united today and beyond. Life in the Arctic is shaped by relationships that have bound Indigenous communities together for centuries. These strong connections will endure no matter what decisions are made in distant capitals. For decades, the Arctic was a rare, low-tension region where international cooperation prevailed, even when relations were strained elsewhere. For example, even when the Iron Curtain was in place, we developed a relationship with Inuit of Chukotka in Siberia. Today, the world sees the Arctic as a renewed, Today, the world sees the Arctic as a region of renewed opportunity. International security issues are coming to the forefront. And now more than ever, we must uphold this tradition of collaboration and respect. Meaningful cooperation strengthened by Indigenous leadership has had a phenomenal impact over many years. Through the Arctic Council and other forums, Indigenous knowledge has driven science progress. It has inspired some of the Arctic's most ambitious environmental and wildlife stewardship initiatives. Indigenous peoples have permanent participant status in the Arctic Council. At this time, the Arctic Council is the only international organization that provides permanent participant status. Otherwise, we are invited as observers in other international forums. Respectful cooperation between Arctic states and Indigenous peoples has also strengthened diplomacy. It has helped resolve disputes peacefully. The 2022 boundary agreement on Hans Island between Canada, the Kingdom of Denmark, and Greenland is a notable example. It was achieved through patient, respectful negotiations that honored Inuit leadership. Time and again, work in the Arctic has demonstrated what can be achieved when cooperation is truly prioritized. Nous avons déjà démontré le pouvoir de la coopération dans l'Arctique. We are at a decisive moment in history. Challenges in the Arctic affect all peoples on Earth. More than ever, we recognize the profound interconnectedness of our world. We must continue to act together in a spirit of reconciliation and respect for Arctic communities. This is where our strength lies. We must stay true to our core values, championing human rights, sustainable development, environmental protection, and solidarity with our Arctic nations and NATO allies. A strong Arctic is one where Northerners have the tools and opportunities they need to thrive. It is an Arctic where Indigenous knowledge, leadership, and values guide our choices. It is an Arctic where Northerners, whether in Norway, or Greenland, Galatlit, Nunat, or anywhere else across the circumpolar region, can continue shaping their own future. So I want to thank all of you for your work supporting Arctic communities and for helping the world understand that the future of the Arctic belongs to the people of the Arctic. Tomorrow, I will visit Denmark and then on to Greenland. Let me be clear. Canada stands firmly in support of the people of Greenland who will determine their own future. Life in the Arctic has profoundly changed since my childhood. New realities, new technologies, new science. Yet today, amid rising tensions, one truth endures. The Arctic's greatest strength and stability lies in the resilience of its peoples. So whatever decisions are made next, whether advancing science research with indigenous knowledge, managing shipping routes, or strengthening defense systems, those efforts must be matched with investments in Arctic communities. Let us give them what they need to be truly self-reliant: food security, reliable infrastructure and housing, clean energy and connectivity, access to healthcare, including mental health, education, and sustainable livelihoods. It is young people I am thinking of most of all. Donnons aux jeunes de l'Arctique la chance de bâtir leurs avenirs dans des communautés fortes. Let us continue giving Arctic youth every opportunity to build healthy, fulfilling lives in a sustainable Arctic, grounded in their cultures and languages, and in their deep relationship with the land and with one another. Thank you. Merci. Goedenamiddag.
Hello, folks. The weather today is gonna take your breath away with the AQI high, and I must.
While pollution is discussed inside the studio, outside is where your skin feels it. A high AQI means a low SQI, skin quality indicator. This stresses the natural barrier, making your skin overproduce oil, which is why you need Sebamed Gentle Facial Cleanser for oily skin with HV extract. It reduces excess oil and maintains your skin's hydrolipid balance. Sebamed.
Portion of the Arctic, a time of renewed opportunity, you called it, a time for solidarity with Greenland, and a time for respectful cooperation between Arctic states and the Arctic indigenous communities. Now, from Canada, we turn our attention to Greenland, which of course has recently been at the center of heated, intense global attention. How is Greenland steering its way through the Arctic Council with its leadership role amid these rising geopolitical tensions with the United States, with so many competing priorities? How does Greenland aim to build the trust, the stability that is needed in the Arctic? Please join me in welcoming Vivian Motzfeldt, Foreign Minister and Minister of Research of Greenland.
Excellencies and friends, thank you for giving me this space and opportunity at this year's Arctic Frontiers, together with my esteemed fellow panelists, to say a few words on the state of Arctic affairs. What we have been going through have been intense and hectic, and there still are. While we are working hard to address and solve the issues that has put Greenland on the global agenda, it is important to acknowledge and appreciate the support and solidarity with us. And my fellow panelists here are a good representation of that. What we are dealing with, what we are defending, is greater than just the issue of Greenland and our future. This is as much about principles that we all care about. These times like these call for cooperation, dialogue, and respect. Dialogue among states and peoples through the established forums we have established. Respect for the fundamental principles of international law territorial integrity, the right of self-determination, democracy, and respect of peoples. The state of affairs is something the people of Greenland feel closely these days, but it also echoes across the world. We are well aware where we are located on the map, and we know that our climates, economies, and people are closely connected with the rest of the world. That is also why we need each other in order to address the common challenges we face. We need allies and partnerships to continue to create a world that we all want to live in. Thank you to our fellow Inuit across Inuit Nunat, our Sami friends, Norway, Sweden, Finland, also the European Union for your strong support. It means a lot to us to know you are backing us. We are pursuing a diplomatic solution through negotiations. I am hopeful and optimistic that we will find common ground that respect our red lines. But I would also like to emphasize that it is necessary to respect the need for the working group to do its work. We have and will continue to seek respectful dialogue through diplomacy and normal channels. This year, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the establishment of the Arctic Council. We are very fortunate to have one of the founding mother of the Council with us today, Governor General of Canada, Mary Simon. In these challenging times, it is even more important that we continue with a forum like the Arctic Council. We need to stand together as Arctic states and indigenous peoples to address environmental and societal challenges that still needs our focus and attention. From the Greenlandic side, we are proud to be playing a leading role in steering the Arctic Council through the current situation. Together with Denmark and the Faroe Islands, we will do our best to ensure that the work of the Arctic Council remains active and that progress is being made, and most importantly, that the Council continues to be relevant for the people who call the place our home. I'm glad to be standing here today among friends, and I've already felt the support of the people here. Let us continue to talk and engage with each other. It is time to stand together and build upon the community we know and the community we wish for. We owe that to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Minister Motzfeldt. We will, of course, pick a little bit more on those red lines in our panel discussion. But for now, we turn to another key global actor, the European Union. Of course, the Arctic has taken on additional importance for Europe. But the key question remains, can the EU truly speak with a single, unified and strong voice when it comes to Arctic affairs? Please welcome Kaja Kallas, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy.
Dear Excellencies, colleagues, and dear friends, I'm thrilled to be back in Tromsø. My first time here was as a teenager, just after Estonia has had restored its independence, and we could finally travel freely. It was during our first trip to Finland that we discovered that you could actually drive up to the north. Nobody's asking any questions. So even cross the border to Norway, a NATO nation, imagine that. So we took that trip, and for me, being in the Soviet prison for so long time, it felt really freedom cubed. So it was really massive. I have to confess that we didn't have visas at the time, and Espen knows this story and has pardoned me already. But I'm also very great to be back here. So legally,
This year, I knew how to make him feel special before he wins the award for Best Valentine's Gift again.
Oh, wow. I love it. So this year you win Valentine?
Yes.
Why do I like this?
more attention, more resources, and yes, more hard power. Our initial European strategy on the Arctic, way back in 2008, focused on climate, fisheries, and research. Today, we have vibrant, active engagement across a wide range of areas, from promoting inclusive and sustainable development to empowering indigenous peoples, fostering Arctic cooperation, supporting innovation and entrepreneurship, and enhancing civil protection capacities and capabilities. But there is a missing dimension. A year after EU adopted its latest Arctic strategy in 2021, Russia, the largest Arctic nation, launched a full-scale war in Ukraine. That war has increased tensions across Europe, but also in the Arctic. Moscow has reopened and modernized Soviet-era military bases in the high north. One of the world's largest concentrations of nuclear weapons is located on the Kola Peninsula, right across the Norwegian border. The Arctic has also become a testing ground for Russian missiles. Europe must catch up with years of Russian military buildup in the region. And here I want to thank Norway for its crucial contribution to European security in the high north. Next month's cold response exercise with the 25,000 troops training here in Norway will send a clear and unmistakable message of resolve. And this brings me to my second observation. The world has changed. And nowhere is this clearer than here in the Arctic. Not since the golden age of Arctic exploration have so many papers, journals, articles, opinions been written about this region, including the growing competition for trade routes and resources. I will not repeat these challenges here, with the exception of one we cannot ignore. And this is the radical change in the US thinking that marks a structural shift in transatlantic relations. Here in the high north, you have felt this acutely in the few last weeks. The EU understands that Greenland is strategically important for the United States. It is also strategically important for us in the European Union. Nearby are key submarine lanes. Beneath it are critical raw materials essential for the global economy. And the shortest flight path for ballistic missiles from Russia runs across the high north. This is recognized by all. But let me be clear where the EU is coming from. We recognize that the high north has been populated for thousands of years by the indigenous peoples of these lands, the Sami in Norway, Sweden and Finland, and the Inuit people of Greenland and beyond. We also believe in territorial integrity and internationally agreed borders. And we say clearly, Greenland belongs to its people. Tensions are lower than they were a few weeks ago. when Foreign Minister Vivian and I met in Brussels, together with the Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen. But there's little clarity about what comes next or when the next dispute may arise. So I will reiterate what I said then. The European Union stands with Greenland, we stand with our member state Denmark, and we stand by UN Charter. The future of Greenland is for the Greenlanders and Denmark to decide. Dear friends, all of this, the security challenges, the geopolitical shifts, the rapidly changing global order, leads me to my third observation. It is time for a fresh EU Arctic policy, one that reflects the times we live in and the world we want to see, including a secure Arctic. For the European Union, it is essential to ground these in strong partnerships. In the Arctic, this means close cooperation with Norway, Canada, and Iceland, with whom we already enjoy close ties and have, or will soon have, in the case of Iceland, the security and defense partnership. NATO remains the cornerstone of security in Europe. But let's not forget that NATO and the EU have 23 members in common, and that today European Union is heavily engaged in defense itself. Our 3 member states, who are Arctic countries, bear a special responsibility for driving our Arctic policy. In the same way, those EU member states who are also NATO allies have a critical role in ensuring that the EU security concerns are in line with those outlined by NATO, including in the Arctic. You know as well as I do that the Arctic security is not defined through the military lens alone. It is also about resilient societies, about people building lives in an unpredictable environment, and about sustainable life. A safe, secure, livable, and prosperous Arctic is a global common good. It's up to us to make it happen. And that is what the EU will work for, together with and in support of the Arctic nations. They can count on us, you can count on us. Thank you.
Thank you, High Representative Kallas. As you say, it is time for a fresh EU Arctic policy. What does it look like from Stockholm's point of view? It is my pleasure to invite Christian Danielsson, State Secretary responsible for EU and Nordic affairs, to tell us more.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Governor General, Foreign Ministers, High Representative Vice President, Excellencies, it's a great pleasure to be here. And as Foreign Minister Barreda mentioned, it's immensely timely. We are in a situation where things are shifting. If I would have been standing here in 2019, I would have said the Arctic is the example of peaceful cooperation. Not anymore. High North is not anymore the place where there are low tensions. And that we have to take in. Now, what does it mean? Well, we have already listened to detailed descriptions of the security challenge. It is clearly there. For our part, we see it and we work on it. Within NATO today, and I think exactly as Foreign Minister mentioned, the whole issue of High North has come into play in the security context of Europe today and also in our transatlantic relations to an extent that we didn't have before. That's good, even though it's a sign of the fact that we have adversaries out there, that we have challenges out there. But we need to work on it. And that's why it is important that we now do the necessary investments in our defense nationally and in cooperation within NATO. We need also to bring in and continue to take into account a challenge that was there 4 years ago, namely climate change, and still will continue to be a challenge for us. Now, that means thinking in terms of how we can mitigate it. That means what we do nationally and globally. That means also how we work together with the communities in the Arctic in taking on the issues that comes about as a result of global change in a negative sense. But this is also...
These hands are made for blessing, dressing, and confessing. To wipe tears, to hold what's dear. Let your hands do what they do best. Presenting Pure Wash, multifunction bidet seats, hands-free hygiene for your daily routine. Hands are made for love. Kohler.
The Arctic, but also in the broader sense for us all, for the global good that the Arctic is in reality. The third element that is playing in and that comes as a result of this, it's a more concrete international interest in the Arctic, in the Arctic. We have just heard about the US interest, and there should be no doubt about Sweden's stance here. We stand with Greenland. We stand with the people of Greenland. We stand with Denmark, and we are very clear that international order must be respected. That goes for territorial integrity, and it goes also for the other elements that comes about in that context. But that being said, this renewed interest in the Arctic also is something that we need to bring into our thinking. And where does it land for Sweden? Well, for us, it lands on the defense side, bringing in the Arctic element clearly in our defense planning within NATO. In the more general sense, we are working on a new Arctic strategy, where we will focus on the Arctic Council and how that one can play an important role in this new reality. Even though we can't take decisions that we could before, we need to be able to do as much as we can on the research side, on all these important elements where the Arctic Council plays. And we need to bring up the necessary trust with the communities living in the Arctic so that we all can play together in that direction. We are also looking into how the Arctic, in our Arctic strategy, of course on the defense side, and we also look very much into how we also can see it from an economic point of view. We very much welcome the work that is going on in the EU and the role that the EU has, increased role that EU now is taking when it comes to the High North, the Arctic region. And of course, it's true that with Sweden, Finland and Norway in NATO, the whole issue of Arctic North, of the High North is not anymore something which is exotic, something far away, but it's in the midst of what is NATO cooperation today. But most important is that we can work together. All of us who have a stake in the Arctic, that we work together, try to path out a route ahead to meet these challenges and make the best out of them. And that's where Sweden will be, and that's what we will support. Thank you.
Mr. Danielsson, may I invite you to remain on stage with me while I call on our panelists to join me? Once again on stage, Foreign Minister Barth Eide and Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, High Representative Kallas, and last but not least, we have Professor Åsa Rennermalm joining us as well, Professor of Geography at Rutgers University in the United States. Welcome to you all. Now, we have so much to talk about. We've touched on so many issues, but of course, the overarching theme has been focused on geopolitics. So let me turn to you first, Professor Åsa Rennermalm. And with no offense to our distinguished panelists, our politicians here on the stage, I know that as a scientist, you will give us the facts straight and without any spin. So tell me to what extent what you have heard today fits with your perspective when it comes to the most consequential challenges facing the Arctic region today.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I'm speaking here today. This is my own opinions and thoughts, and not as a representative of Rutgers University or the American Geophysical Union, where I hold many volunteer leadership roles. There's no doubt about it that the geopolitical situation in the Arctic right now is very serious and troublesome. But the long-term security issue in the Arctic is not what's happening right now. The long-term security issue of the Arctic is climate change and environmental degradation and pollution. To understand what's going on, we need science. And we may know on a big picture level what is going on, but there's so much still to uncover because we don't know exactly how climate change is going to unfold. We do not know how it's going to play out in the local communities across the Arctic. And to understand that, we need science. We need to collect data on the ground, make observations, analyze them. We need to run models, and we need to collaborate. So it's a paradox at this time when science is so important that science is being under increasing threats of being diminished in the world. And I'm not just speaking, I'm here, I'm an American person, I work at an American university, and the changes we've seen in the last year with the attacks on science in America is absolutely devastating. But we see similar things happening in Europe too, with funds being diverted to military buildup and production of weapons. So at this time, when we need science, science is also under threat.
So you say science is under threat, and we've been talking a lot today about the importance of security in the region. To what extent is it central to understand the role that science can play in making that link between climate change and security risks? And are scientists as well being marginalized? You say the funds are being cut, the research funds, but scientists themselves, are they being listened to by policymakers?
I mean, we see some very alarming trends that we see in our societies today is eroding trust in expert knowledge and evidence. And it's because of spread of misinformation and disinformation. And in the United States, we see it's really coming to a head where people can't even agree on what is reliable information. What are the truths that we all can agree on? And when we cannot agree on that, that's a huge issue for our security, because how are we going to work together if we cannot agree on the basics? So I see that as a huge problem.
How challenging is it to be a scientist in the US today?
I mean, it's incredibly shocking what's happened in the United States in the last year, with friends losing their jobs, with grants being pulled, with threats of extremely important institutions like the National Center of Atmospheric Research being threatened to be dismantled, one of the most important research institutions in the world that provides models, computing infrastructure, and I don't even know half of what they do. And what's also happening is that we're losing a new generation of scientists because the pathways to become a scientist is becoming more difficult.
All right, Professor, we will obviously follow.
Hello, folks. The weather today is gonna take your breath away with the AQI high, and I must.
While pollution is discussed inside a studio, outside is where your skin feels it. A high AQI means a low SQI, skin quality indicator. This stresses the natural barrier, making your skin overproduce oil, which is why you need Sebamed Gentle Facial Cleanser for oily skin with ideal pH 5.5. It reduces excess oil and maintains your maintains hydrolipid balance. Seabermed.
Is it in the best interest of the Arctic?
No, status quo is not good. This is a holding operation to keep the apparatus alive as we're waiting for better times, and we work elsewhere to make times better. So status quo is not tenable. That's absolutely true. I would very much like to echo this, that it is also, as a government representative, it's incredibly important to strengthen and actually defend the protection of facts and science. And science basically a methodological way to falsify or verify hypotheses in whatever field. And you know, the Enlightenment, which is sort of foundation of modern civilization, was about rulers accepting that although I feel that the world is flat, the scientists tell me that it's round. And at the end of the day, it's okay. It's not woke. You know, it's acceptable. All right, I have to rearrange. This is, you know, when we went from Middle Ages to Enlightenment. And if we're going backwards, we're in deep trouble. For all of us, very, very serious trouble. Because if you don't believe, and of course, scientists never agree on everything. You know, this is, I have a research background myself. But, you know, you agree on certain methods that make certain things more likely and certain things are simply wrong. So I think for the rest of us who are not in science as such, just to accept that there is such a thing, that think there is truth and false, is a foundation for our civilization. And we need to stand up for that, and we need to take the omen for what you see in some countries and make sure it doesn't happen here.
So just briefly speaking about myth and reality, facts and fiction, on a political level, is there a tendency to sometimes accept and tolerate faulty statements? And I have in mind the statements that the US president has made recently with regard to Greenland, saying that it faces a serious threat from Russia and China and their warships swarming around the area. To what extent do you agree with this? Is it right or false? And should you speak up when you see that there are certain falsehood being told?
Well, I mean, this is a very central issue to the conversations we are having. You know, there is definitely a need to take the security of the Arctic more seriously. And thankfully, there's also several arrangements to enable that. It's NATO. It's including cooperation with the EU, but Arctic countries, 7 out of 8 Arctic countries are NATO. The Kingdom of Denmark has a defense agreement with the US from 1951, which allows for much, much more access to Greenland within the current framework. So what we have done, and this, I mean, I'm proud to say, practically every single one of the 31 NATO members that are not the US has said, on the one hand, we stand by the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland for Greenlanders, and whatever should happen to the Danish realm, if anything should change, it's up to the Greenlanders and the Danes, nobody else. So we stand up for that, not only because of Denmark, Kingdom of Denmark, but because of the principle that you simply don't take other people's land by force. At the same time, we also say collectively that we're more than willing to discuss the real security challenge in the Arctic and work on them together. So that's this double message, has been very explicit from all of us, and I'm talking about the very best friends of the United States of America.
There have been very explicit statements of solidarity, but beyond the statements, what are you willing to do to stand up to an ally like the United States if it goes from attempts to influence and control Greenland to something more concrete?
Well, I was, you know, I was in Davos. I was listening to the president when he said that he would not use force against the Kingdom of Denmark and Greenland. And a few hours later that he withdrew the threats of tariff punishment for those of us who actually said we're ready to enhance our presence in Greenland because we want to take security issues seriously. So that response has already had an effect. I am very much aware with Vivian Motzfeldt and Lars Løkke Rasmussen, there's still work to do, but we are in a different space. And kudos to them for taking this very wisely into a different space. And we rest assured that we're all with you here.
But is the US still a reliable ally? Yes or no?
So
time is tight.
What politicians don't like yes and no questions. So I mean,
I see you also
the
dodged my
US
first
is
question.
a very important ally, and we are just looking in a region where we have a significant and increasing American participation as we want to in exercises, in overseeing what's happening on the Russian side in the coal line and our waters. So we work very closely with the US, and there are so many Americans who are very much aware of the importance of these areas and the importance of alliance. So, and we've been allied with the US for 77 years, and there have been more different presidents through these 77 years.
All right, so the answer is yes.
Yeah.
They are still a trusted ally despite all of the uncertainties. But we'll get back to it. Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, if I can come to you very quickly. I mean, you said that the time now was for negotiations and that you were seeking a diplomatic way out of the impasse with the United States. You also mentioned briefly the red lines. Has the threat of the United States to acquire Greenland one way or the other, even though President Trump has said that there will be no military means used, has it completely disappeared, or do you still have concerns?
Oh, no, I think that the concerns is still very high, but what we stand just for 3 weeks ago and where we are today, I feel more, I see more hope in the future, and at the same time that how important it is to take this diplomatic track. And now we are in direct communication, and instead of talking to each other through media. And I think that the decision to make this working group gives us a sense of hope, and of course we'll do our best to find the best solution so we can, of course, United States has been our ally for many years and a friend, and we have been saying in many circumstances how important it is for our security. We have been friends still today and allies, but the rhetoric you have been used is not something you have been heard from your ally. So the situation has demanded many things from our side to find the right solutions, of course, with the in cooperation with Denmark. Also making this defense agreement we did with the defense minister. At the same time that we are taking issues that we have never been taken before, talking about capabilities that we don't even have terminology on that. We don't even have word for that. So at the same time, all these tensions that came so fast, that you also need to have your people with you. And talking about low tension just for 2 years ago, and still have that in your policy as a very high priority, but seeing the reality is changing and finding the right balances. And yes, it's still very difficult.
But what is your absolute red line?
डाइजेस्टिव बिस्किट्स को बनाना शुरू किया मैकविटीज ने। मैकविटीज ट्रू ओरिजिनल्स, सदियों का भरोसा।
And do you believe that NATO diplomacy in Davos actually helped secure Greenland's sovereignty? Are you confident that your red lines were passed on to the United States?
I believe that situation demands that we make many dialogues. We talk with each other, but I think the red lines has been very clear from our side. We stand with Kingdom of Denmark and our right to self-determination, territorial integrity, world order and international law, and these are very much our red lines.
So Greenland is not for sale?
Greenland is not for
today,
sale.
not in the future?
Absolutely not. And we have been there in thousands of years. To be in Greenland, you need to adapt in any changes. And these changes are something that also demands adaptation and finding the creativity that you are so good at, because to find the solution, you only have yourself to solve.
High Representative Kallas, how are you adapting? How is the EU adapting to this new Arctic environment?
Well, we are adapting, but I wanted to address something that the professor said. I absolutely agree that climate change is the biggest risk here and across the world. Actually, if I go around the world and I talk to countries in Indo-Pacific, and they say that there are superpowers who say that we are not coming here to preach you about climate change, then they say you don't actually understand what life we are living, because this is our biggest risk. Now, Europe is dealing with the climate change, and it's increasingly hard because, not the whole powers are there anymore. And I absolutely agree with you that the issue of trusting science is a very important issue, because also democracy is based on trust. If people can't really believe what to, or have to doubt what is right or what is wrong, and there's so much blurring of the picture, then you can't really, you can manipulate very much on the basis of you don't really know what is going on. So this is dangerous for democracy. And actually right now, I mean, Europe is still fighting with the climate change. Yesterday I was in the Norwegian parliament, and then was also one member is like, Europe is weak because you are dealing with all these climate issues, and you're trying to put forward the policies that are making your economy weaker. Yes, but we want our kids to live in this world as well. So that is, yes, maybe a bit a bigger prices at this moment for us, but at the same time, I mean, there also is a life after us. So I think this is important. And so to answer your question, we are adapting to this. So before we dealt only with the climate change environment research when it comes to the Arctic fisheries, of course, not to forget. But now we are also dealing with the security issues, because this is a new concern that is rising.
High Representative Kallas, good to hear you talk so much about climate change. And I think, Professor, you'll be happy that this is the one issue that every politician can agree on.
Not every politician,
Well,
come on.
Well,
Look at the news.
If we leave the United States aside,
well,
and a couple
we
of other
can't
places.
kind of leave them aside.
Well, let's bring the US back in, as I like to go into the more sort of provocative areas where there might be less agreement. I mean, on stage earlier in your speech, you talked about how the Arctic requires more hard power, and that there was recently a radical change in the US thinking. You didn't mince your word. You stand with Greenland and the rest of it. But you did say as well in Brussels that the EU vows to hold its ground. I just wonder how. Is it not often too cautious because of its dependence on the United States for security and defense? Mark Rutte said it very bluntly.
Of course, we are cautious because there's a lot at stake. I mean, there's a full-scale war going on European continent, and there are threats coming from, economic coercion, big challenges from China that is influencing our economies. If it is influencing our economies, it's influencing jobs and people's salaries, and then it's creating, polarization within our societies and more instability. So it's all very much interlinked. So we have to carefully, walk this road and try to adopt and work. We don't want to conflict with anybody. I mean, we want a peaceful life and prosperity for our peoples. But it is the situation where we are, and if you have such big risks, also the military threats, then you also need to work on building the defense that is acting as a deterrent, so we might not need it if the deterrence is strong enough.
And we want to come back to this, how important it is for Europe to build its own defense capability. But I do want to move, last but not least, to Christian Danielsen and ask you as well about how you assess this growing geopolitical tense landscape, and whether or not Europe can and should build its own defenses to rely less on the United States.
Well, that's what what we are doing.
How fast
that's
can it
part
happen?
of. Well, I think we have said that the ambition should be that we should have a ability to defend ourselves by 2030, if I remember rightly. And if you look on the investments being done in countries like Estonia or Poland, Sweden, and nearly all of the member states, it's moving very fast in that direction. So that's what we are doing. But if your broader question is about, if we go back to the Arctic, I think what is interesting right now is we have this new reality where we have adversaries, and put it bluntly, it's Russia. I mean, if you look around, Russia is the adversary. I mean, you mentioned it very clearly, Foreign Minister, and you mentioned the build-up of the bases and capacities that Russia is building on the North Sea route. On that one, NATO is absolutely essential, and there we're working with the Americans. So what is happening now is that we are building up capacity to plan, defense planning for the High North. We are having exercises here now. We are discussing how to furthering that into other parts of the High North. And we believe firmly that that's the way we should do it when it comes to the defense planning. And then on the EU...
But could it lead to more escalation as opposed to less?
No, this is not about
over-militarization of the Arctic.
It's not about escalation. It is about building up the deterrence in reality, to see to that nobody would like to escalate, basically. So I think it's very, very important. And that is something which unfortunately is new for the Arctic, because we all liked it when it was an area of peaceful cooperation. But it's part of the reality of the day.
Let's take a quick look at how Arctic politics and these tensions are affecting international cooperation, scientific collaboration in this rapidly changing climate. Let's take a look at research done by the Norwegian Polar Institute.
Svalbard is one of the areas most severely affected by global climate change, warming 5 to 6 times faster than the global average. Scientists from the Norwegian Polar Institute are heading out in the field. Over several weeks of fieldwork, they will measure how much the glacier has melted. Authorities in polar environmental issues. The results are discouraging. Svalbard's largest glacier lost 1.5 meters of snow and ice in 2024. Total ice loss from Svalbard is expected to more than double over the course of this century. From South Pacific sea level rise to global permafrost melt, the world community is dependent on knowledge from the ice-covered and far reaches of the Earth. Future management of the Arctic relies upon international scientific collaboration. From collecting, sharing, and analyzing data to working on joint projects and new technology. A single mooring in the Arctic Ocean water column can hold invaluable information in predicting the development of the future Arctic climate system. Polar scientists are out in the field searching for answers to the most pressing challenges of our times. 2026 will be a major year for polar research. In partnership with the Research Council of Norway, we are preparing Norway's participation in the 5th International Polar Year. We are also setting up the Svalbard Science Office in Longyearbyen. Collaborative infrastructure is the backbone of polar research, and international cooperation is needed to ensure scientists from all over can participate in this effort. As we head towards 2050, this underscores the huge need for knowledge and updated climate prognosis in an Arctic that is becoming more open and accessible. International collaboration is being challenged. of science is more important than ever. Together, we need to be well equipped to find solutions to the challenges we are faced with in the high Arctic.
International cooperation, scientific cooperation, is being challenged. An understatement, perhaps, Professor. Just how frustrated are you and so many of the scientists here in the room by these ongoing political tensions that are limiting the international collaboration? And by that, I mean perhaps as well, how important of a gap does Russia's absence and collaboration within the Arctic Council impact negatively this research, because it hosts, as far as I could tell, the largest polar bear populations. Russia does, correct me if I'm wrong, and the majority of Arctic research stations as well. How critical would Russia be?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on Russian polar bears, but Russia certainly has the largest landmass in the Arctic. And the loss of Russian collaboration is, of course, an incredible tragedy. And I think with all this talk about, all the troubles we're going through right now, let's not forget the long-term vision of a peaceful Arctic where we work together and where we can work across border, including Russia. I went to a talk yesterday here where they highlighted the incredible impacts of some of the loss of Russian collaboration. There is this network of a research station called Impact, and losing the Russian stations. Like what we do as scientists, we go out and we observe the world, right? And having observations from these Russian research station is incredibly central to understand what's going on with the Arctic on a larger scale. So the loss of that international collaboration is devastating. And now we see the United States withdrawing also from international collaboration. I have colleagues who are afraid to travel to the United States for meetings. I was at a big meeting in December with a lot of 20,000 scientists. But even though we were 20,000, there was a decline in the number of international participants. This is incredibly troubling.
Well, thank you for these thoughts. And I'm looking at the clock and it's really working against us. We've got just over a minute. So I just want to get final thoughts. So much to discuss, but we'll leave it for another time. Final thoughts on what's going on. So the scientific situation, but as well the tension. And for you, Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, what you intend to do with your leadership of the Arctic. What advice will you take from Norway?
Yes. How important it is to keep Arctic Council vibrant, and how important it is to keep our cooperation as strong as we can, and keep it vibrant as we can, and have a common understanding between all these states demands the world's future. So how important it is on that, and of course on our leadership, how important it is to make it so close to people as possible, indigenous people and us living in the Arctic. And situation today, for just several months ago, the biggest threat is climate change. Today, a new reality with the threat from your ally. So finding the right balances every day, and never know the day tomorrow will bring to you. So I would just say, on behalf of all Greenlandic people, thank you so much for standing with us. And yeah.
A lot of competing priorities, a lot on your plate, no doubt. High Representative Kallas, for you, if you were to touch on one or two priorities for the Arctic policy of the European Union, how would you fundamentally change it?
Well, like I said, I think the fundamental difference is the security aspect that wasn't there before. So this is what we also need to address, in addition to the climate change, environmental issues, fisheries research that were already there.
Mr. Christensen, for you,
Yeah,
what
I
is the
think-
key
I
challenge?
think what is essential is that we find a way of meeting these challenges with the communities in the Arctic, that we have a sense that we do this together. And here the Arctic Council will play an important role. We are going to take the presidency of the Arctic Council or chairmanship from 2027 and 2 years ahead, and we will work with that in mind. Bring in the communities, they are already there, but try to get it even more.
Professor, how optimistic are you?
Optimistic. Well, I'm just here as an American, but I'm also a person that has deep roots in Europe, being born in Sweden, studied in Denmark, and spent my career understanding the Greenland ice sheet.
Wow.
I come with a warning for you. You may look at the United States and say it doesn't happen here, but it can happen here. The same forces are operating in Europe, and you're an election away from a similar sort of deterioration of the scientific infrastructure. And the solution, my friends, is to organize and get ready to speak out. And we're doing that in the United States. We're fighting in the courts, and we're standing up, and we're having alternative, we're expressing our alternative vision for the future. And I would just want to share with you this thing. This is a statement in support of Halaslit Nunat, Greenland's right to determine its own future. It's signed by over 200.
Rahul Arora, age 32, took a gym membership because he wanted to, above all, gain muscle. It was his dream to wear t-shirts with the sleeves rolled up, not tuck in his stomach, when a girl would walk by and buy the XL-sized protein powder in front of his friend. He even got a cool bike to complete the look. This, however, is not Rahul Arora. Rahul Arora, age 32, took a gym membership, but he never showed up. He could have, though, anytime, anywhere. So he really had no excuse, which is why we used the money from his gym membership to make this film, to motivate Rahul Arora some more, of course. Biceps would sure look good with your new bike, Rahul.
Most of us are countries with sort of high trust, high sense of community and togetherness, and I think preserving that is maybe as important as investing in defense, which is also good. But to keep societies united, and I think what you're doing now in Greenland and also in the Kingdom is very impressive. But my final message is a positive one, which is that remember that the reason we discuss security was not generated in the Arctic. It's not because of Arctic development. It's because of global development and regional development, war in Ukraine and Russia's behavior. The 8 states that are actually in the Arctic, they actually have no, let's put the caveat around this Greenland discussion in the US, but if you take the real issues, there is now outstanding disputes. We settle it. We know the border is, we know where the states is, we know where Russia starts and ends, we know where NATO countries start and ends. So these are countries that are able to collaborate. And right now it's difficult with Russia, but at least the rest of us should try, because in contrast to many other places, part of the Eastern Europe now, with you have Belarus, you have Moldova, you got Armenia, you got Georgia, which is in play in a sense. We're nothing of that here. It's very clear. Our Russia's border goes to the Norwegian border, and from the first meter there's a NATO border. That's a good starting point, because there is nothing to quarrel about in the Arctic. But at the same time, we say, as I said, if there is a broader dispute, our waters will be important. So let's remember this is still true. That there are some problems we do not have in the Arctic, and let's keep it that way.
Your one-word tip for Greenland as it takes the torch forward.
Well, Greenland is already on it. They're doing an excellent job. We're still in a maintenance mode, but keeping the council together. And again, I think, I am absolutely convinced that Greenland and Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, with the support of all of us, will prevail in this dispute. And we will work together as all Arctic countries on the security of the Arctic in the long run.
All right. On this very positive diplomatic note, thank you all very much indeed. Foreign Minister Bartheide, High Representative Kallas, Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, Professor Orsa, and Mr. Christensen. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. We will meet back here in the afternoon for a panel discussion on this space to collaborate. So please join us again. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Hey, 44, is that you, lady? Yeah, why you say nothing? Strawberry, all right. Go yourself.